Late yesterday, the Supreme Court approved changes that would give the FBI more power over when and where they can access our computers and everybody else's computers everywhere. Ostensibly, the charges are designed to help the FBI combat offshore botnets. But Iain, you say this change is pretty nefarious and it's something we want to pay attention to.
Well, basically, this gives the FBI or law enforcement in the US the ability to hack any computer anywhere in the world, pretty much wherever they like. Just by going to one judge and obtaining a warrant for it. It's a fairly egregious thing to try and push through as an administrative rule change. I mean, Congress hasn't debated this. There's been no public consultation. All the tech firms are against it. Civil libertarians are against it. Even some politicians against it. Senator Ron Wyden is actually coming out and saying he'll definitely introduce legislation to stop this. Now, we've got until December the 1st before the new rule kicks in. But if it does, it's going to, A, be a very big pieces of overreach on behalf of law enforcement, but it's really going to hurt America in the eyes of the rest of the world as well, because basically it's saying, if we get one warrant, then that's it. All your computers belong to us.
So right now, if someone is using a Tor browser or something and nobody knows where they are, whose jurisdiction is it?
Well, this is what the rule change is meant to sort out. Ideally, they should actually find out where these people are and then issue warrants in that particular locality. Now, this whole case was brought to light with the Playpen investigation by the FBI, where a site hosting images of child abuse was found. They seized the servers of and ran the site themselves for 2 weeks, and then put network investigative techniques, as they call it, which we suspect is a malware plugin, into their computers and identified individual people. Now, technically, they should have got a warrant for where those individual people were, but they didn't know where they were at the time. So on one level, something's got to change, but doing it by an administrative rule change just is fundamentally undemocratic and very dangerous.
So, I mean, this would let the U.S. give the U.S. jurisdiction anywhere?
Absolutely anywhere, yeah. I mean, it's basically they would get one warrant, and wherever the computers are, they could be able to get into them. And then, crucially as well, it gives the FBI, or gives law enforcement, the right to hack into people's computers who are themselves the victims of hacking. Now, this is billed as a botnet measure, an anti-botnet measure to actually find out where the command and control servers are. But at the same time, again, it's a massive amount of overreach for what is essentially a fairly simple problem.
So, yeah, that was what Wyden wrote on his blog about that it treats the victim like the criminal. So what you're saying is, like, if you haven't done any of your updates and your computer is being used as a zombie for this botnet, this would say that the government would be able to search your computer as well?
Yes, indeed. They'd be able to search for evidence related to the criminals who are actually putting it on there. What isn't made clear, and this is why we need a reasoned debate about this, is if they did that and they found other material which was deemed to be illegal, would the person then be able to be charged? Under the rules as they stand at the moment, it appears that they would be. But because this is phrased in a very broad way, there's no real way of finding that out until the first cases come to court, and then the legal precedent has to be built up. So this is why we need a proper debate on it, because at the moment, as it stands, the language is so broad that it could really open the door to a whole variety of tricks, which really law enforcement shouldn't have the ability to get just on the basis of a rule change. This needs politicians elected by the people to actually argue it through and craft something which is usable within the real world.
So all of this sounds crazy to me. Why do you think this isn't getting more attention? Is it because it's just early days, or is it because it's not as flashy as like the Apple versus the FBI? Why aren't we hearing more about this?
Well, it's a long process. The Justice Department has been mulling these changes for 3 years, and it's only yesterday that the Supreme Court decided, yep, okay, we can sign off on this, and then sent it back to Congress. So this is the beginning of basically a campaign that's going to last, as I say, until December the 1st, when the changes come into effect. So it's been bubbling under. We've been discussing it on and off on the site, but it was a very slow burner, as I say, 3 years in the making. And then all of a sudden, the Supreme Court came out and said, yep, okay, we can approve this, started the process going, and now people are really starting to realize that this could be a major problem going forward.
So there's nothing really to do until December 1st?
Well, there's a lot to do before December 1st. There's basically getting in contact with politicians, getting them organized about this, having a proper debate and coming up with a law which would give, would be a reasoned law which would allow, a reasonable amount of hacking under judicial supervision. As it stands at the moment, it just takes one judge and that's it. That's the whole ball game. I think what we need to do is actually look at this in a more reasoned way and say exactly what powers the government has before they're hacking into people's computers. Because from an individual level, it's bad, but from a corporate level as well, this opens up companies, both in America and overseas, to potentially a very serious problem. Because if the FBI, if one of their machines gets infected, law enforcement could then legally, under US law, go in there, and that opens them up to liability in ways which is going to make a lot of lawyers very fat and happy, but it's going to make the rest of us in a much more precarious position.